Good afternoon, dear participants of Astana Finance Days conference. I welcome all of you at the panel that is dedicated to crypto assets, in particular to CBDC. They are a national cryptocurrency, the topic that is actively discussed in the whole world. Based on the studies that we have on this topic and based on different reviews, about 90% of central banks, to some extent, consider the introduction of national cryptocurrencies. And cryptocurrency, starting from the main cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and others, recent years are discussed very actively. They are recognized by many financial institutions, and they are discussed by the regulators also. Today, we also want to discuss this topic, and for this, we invited the experts in this field. First of all, I would like to present these experts, and after that, we will go to discussion. And I suggest to do the following. First, I will present everyone, and after that, we will speak individually with all of you and discuss all the fields that you are professional in, to listen your comments. First of all, I would like to present Makoto Takemiya, who is a CEO Soromitsu. Makoto and the company itself is well known by blockchain services. Makoto is very active participant of GBBC, International Council or Association of regulators and companies that develop blockchain technologies and regulations around it. In particular, Makoto developed together with Cambodia Bank a project on this topic, on CBDC, and in total, the issues that are connected with payments, international transactions, electronic wallets. Makoto and I participated at different conferences.
Thank you for participating. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Michael Soon, who is well known by its active participation in CBDC development, especially. We would like to speak about how this topic is promoted in China, for example. We know that he has been working in blockchain field for many years. He is an expert in the field of implementation and regulation of cryptocurrency and regulation of national cryptocurrencies. And we have many topics to discuss with you, of course. Thank you very much for your participation. The next speaker is Vadim Krutov, Director General of BitFury from Russia. We have BitFury in Kazakhstan also. It's one of the major producers for mining equipment, and they are the participants of mining field, crypto mining. And I think that we also have many topics to discuss with you together. And Kazakhstan is in the top 5 on trade, and that is why BitFury was very important in this activity. Thank you very much for your participation. The next speaker is Gleb Kostarev. Is Gleb Kostarev here? Okay, Gleb, yes. Gleb is the head of Binance in Eastern Europe and CIS countries. It's one of the biggest crypto stock exchange we also would like to discuss with you, Gleb, where we are going. And next, as for Kazakhstan, what's happening in Kazakhstan? In order to answer this issue, we invited also Amangeldy Zhukenov, the chairman of the Committee of Information Security of the Ministry of Digital Development in the Republic of Kazakhstan, that adopted different laws on mining and cryptocurrency. That is why we would like to listen to your comments. Thank you very much that you participate on behalf of official bodies in Kazakhstan. I think for the whole society, we have few time. Let's go to speakers, please. Okay. And Salimbayev Dauren, who works in the regulation of financings in the Republic of Kazakhstan field. I think that his comments will be also useful for our participants and listeners.
So, as I mentioned, so you have a very big experience in blockchain development and regulation. And the GBBC itself is very influenced in terms of regulation of cryptocurrencies around the world. So what's happening now? How can you comment on what's going on with crypto at all, blockchain itself, regulation around the world, and CBDC?
That's a very broad and big topic.
You are our, common expert who knows a lot of stuff, and so can you share it briefly, please?
Yeah, sure. So I've been around blockchain space since 2013, and I've been partaken in many different projects, including public cryptocurrency projects as an open source contributor, and also kind of enterprise projects that I do with my company. So for example, the work we do with the Central Bank of Cambodia. So I do think that it does give me a little bit of a unique perspective on kind of looking at both worlds. And the trends that we see around the world are really the blockchain technology, like for public cryptocurrencies, is getting better and better, and the usability is getting better as well. And at the same time, central banks have not really evolved at the same rate of change, because they're very conservative and heavily regulated institutions. And so what we see is a huge growth of kind of like a supernova, almost like going out and spreading out very quickly in the cryptocurrency space of new ideas and innovation, many of which completely burn out and fail. But people are trying many different things, and just through the process of competition and evolution, we're starting to see some ideas kind of coalesce. And one of them is kind of this concept of money Legos. So this idea that you can take many different pieces and you can kind of create APIs or protocols around them, and you can combine them, and then you can have an even bigger product or service. And then you can combine that again in other ways. And kind of the permissionless architecture, and at the same time, the need to not have to trust anyone. There's no central authority, and everything is kind of verified and done on chain now. So that really makes the composability quite significant. Now, some countries have been embracing this quite a lot. I think many countries see the potential of this to help their citizens, or they don't want to stifle innovation before it's really mature. And many of these complex systems self-organize as well to protect users. So many countries have been kind of helping it along, while at the same time, for example, Japan has very strict regulations about cryptocurrencies, but that's really focused on preventing things like scams and obvious illegal activity like money laundering. And so some regulators are very open to this. Others are very, very negative. Even the Central Bank of Cambodia that we work with, they banned cryptocurrencies very early on, kind of as a reaction to the plethora of scams that they had at the time. And kind of a lot of people, you have to walk a very fine line between protecting innovation and protecting consumers. And we kind of see many regulators having this dialogue and trying to figure out where that line is. And the Global Blockchain Business Council is kind of trying to provide that education to teach teach the regulators about this.
Yeah, thank you. And can we say that blockchain itself as a technology proved that it can exist and proved the concept of useless? And the CBDC is one of examples that governments around the world agree with that with technology and like trying to use it for this.
Yeah, well, the concept of CBDC, I think it's quite popular now, but really several years.
Kairat, unfortunately, we do not have enough time for additional questions. We need to move forward.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll just say very quickly that the concept of CBDC really is kind of this understanding of blockchain as a way to create to have a digital scarce object, and so many central banks are kind of figuring out, how do we take this, this technology and apply it to something like a digital payment system, and that's so I think the public cryptocurrency space will continue in parallel. Maybe it will be slightly more regulated than it is now. At the same time, for each individual country, I think a CBDC will also take place, probably on blockchain because of the digital scarce nature.
Thank you, Makoto. Michael, so you've been involved in developing of CBDC in China, right? And and you have very good background in blockchain space in crypto, and saw a lot of crypto enthusiasts, etc. So can we say that development CBDC in China, which is very huge, is kind of an answer from Chinese government to crypto enthusiasts all over the world? That like it should be kind of centralized. We use blockchain. It will be like perfect, but not that centralized. So we control. How can you comment this?
Well, yeah, so I think this is a very interesting question. To more of an international audience, it seems that China is very against crypto and digital assets. And indeed, they make a very clear distinction between unregulated crypto and regulated crypto, right? So unregulated stuff, there actually is a lot of debate, and it's not supported, and ICOs has been stamped out, and Bitcoin mining has been suppressed now. A lot of that kind of activity in the recent days, right? But the regulated stuff is fully supported by the government, starting first, of course, with the digital RMB, which is now slated to be launched by the Olympics of 2022, Winter Olympics in Beijing, as a nice coming out party for the Chinese government to do this. They've scaled the stress testing across all the major economically important zones in China, and are testing all sorts of interesting use cases, right? And it is a centralized version of digital currency, i.e. this PBOC, the People's Bank of China, is firmly in control, but it's actually designed with a flexible, deployment in mind, right? It's a two-tier architecture. The first tier is very centralized. It's almost identical to how central banks deliver payments to their, policy banks. That has already been digitized around the world. Now, the second tier, where the banks actually deploy the currencies into society and to develop the economy, that optionally can be more decentralized using blockchain. And in fact, Mu Tanswen, the director of the Digital Currency Institute, has supported that idea, because the decentralization, in fact, allows you to get to a much larger audience and have much more fungibility, et cetera. So I think it's a nice balance. The central government certainly wants to control their sovereignty, which is, I think, pretty much all central banks have the same idea here, but also have the flexible mechanisms to be able to deploy that internationally in a more decentralized way. Yeah.
Thank you. And what about international payments? Do you expect Chinese CBDC to be a kind of global currency, which is more useful for international trade and international transfers, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the central government, as well as the Digital Currency Institute, as well as PBOC, has been very explicit to say that the first deployment and commercialization will be mainly a mainland affair. To number one, to replace M0 money supply, cash, retail, that is, right? And then to be able to do so on the mainland as a way to make a more resilient payment ecosystem and give more competition and ability for these banks to compete against, in China, the duopoly, we call Alipay and WeChat Pay, which right now control 96% of mobile payments in the country. So these are the considerations for the government, first and foremost. They don't have a plan that they're announcing to be international. But that being said, there's some interesting movements. In Hong Kong, there is the CBDC experiment, which is wholesale settlements. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority with Bank of Thailand, recently UAE, and most recently, just in the last couple of months, the PBOC, the People's Bank of China, has also indicated that they want to be a part. So that is projecting an intent to explore at least one wholesale settlement, international settlement. There also has been testing of bilateral, specifically with Hong Kong, and I now believe Singapore, a few places where Chinese tourists can now use the CBDCs, and Hong Kong citizens can now apply for a digital wallet to pay for things in Shenzhen, let's say. So there's some small test beds, right? But I think it's an interesting scenario internationally, right? As you mentioned, 86% of central banks are developing CBDCs. Those will roll out in the next probably number of years. But then when the next question is when those digital currencies are start to roll out, how will they start to clear and settle and interact with each other, right? And so I think the next challenges will be technology interoperability, which is the ability for Corda blockchain to settle with Ethereum blockchain, to settle with Algorand blockchain, et cetera, and certainly on the China side, they're working hard on blockchain interoperability. There's something called the blockchain-based service network, which is meant to allow this interoperability. And the other major question is regulatory interoperability, right? When the ECB, Christine Lagarde, finally pulls the trigger on their digital euro and they want to settle with the digital Singapore dollar, how will that, what are the compliance? There's the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, setting the travel rule. Things are just getting set up. So it should be very, very interesting to see how this environment evolves.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's a very hot topic and a lot of questions could be asked, and if we have time, we will also discuss it. Thank you. Vladimir,
I would like to ask you about mining. As I have already mentioned, the mining in Kazakhstan is widely popular and many investors are interested in it. On the one hand, it's very interesting. On the other hand, there are many discussions. Because does it make sense for the economy? Because it will increase the electricity costs and also it's connected with the pollution. I know that with Fury, for example, is positioning itself in green financing and so on, but I would like to understand what are the positive sides. So what we are combating with. Thank you very much, Kairat. The topic of mining is very important and urgent. Mining has been existing for many years, but what happened this year and last year?
Mining and cryptocurrencies became an institutional product, and investors started perceiving it as a different class of investment that is behaving differently and independently of other classes of investments that used to be very popular: gold, shares, bonds. So institutionals started getting into cryptocurrencies and mining, and that created a lot of questions on whether mining is green In general, there is a misperception that mining is harmful and it's wasting energy, electricity, and it's not creating any value. But when you think of it, what is the energy spent for? This is used to provide power to servers, and all of these servers that process transactions in Bitcoin basically are the protection for Bitcoin from any hacks, and the more there are of the servers, the greater the reliability of Bitcoin. So, for instance, Bitcoin was never hacked in its whole history. So this consumption is directly converted into value, and the value presented by this protected network. However, this does not eliminate the issue of consumption, and certainly the question of green energy is quite relevant. According to the recent research, over 60% of miners are already consuming electricity from sustainable sources. So these are renewable energy sources, and these are, for instance, energy sources from gas power plants having green certificates, and this trend will strengthen. According to the recent study done by Bitcoin Mining Consortium, Bitcoin industry is becoming greener faster than other industries. And there is another interesting effect. The Bitcoin industry having some peculiarities. The servers are quite mobile. They can be located in close proximity to generation sources. They actually help in developing renewable energy sources, which can be clearly demonstrated in the US, where solar energy wind energy is developing quite quickly, and mining capacities help in mitigating the peaks of these players. Thank you. Thank you. So your idea is that Bitcoin mining, cryptocurrency mining is driving green technologies. Yes, if you use this tool correctly, like they do in the US, then the Bitcoin mining can actually help and incentivize the development of green energy. Okay, thank you. Could you briefly tell us what are the barriers to mining in Kazakhstan or all over the world? Let me note that Kazakhstan probably is one of the countries, one of the jurisdictions that is very attractive to miners, and market players have seen it when Kazakhstan, I would say, made a breakthrough, and the share of Kazakhstan in the international market grew from less than 1% up to 10% now of the whole network. This also is a contribution of AIFC. Kazakhstan has good rankings in doing business as a country, but special regulation regime provided by AIFC served as an additional incentive and additional guarantee for global players if they come to Kazakhstan. What is the main barrier right now? Well, in the energy mix of the country, as far as I remember, 60 or 70% of energy is still being generated using fossil fuels, and not only fossil fuels, but specifically coal. And this certainly is concerning to the investors, because as participants of all international consortia, we see the concerns among the players. The players are very responsible, or much more responsible than 5 or 6 years ago. So when Western investors, although they see the attractiveness of Kazakhstan in doing business, in taxation, in regulation, and they see that capex and opex are low, but they still face these concerns that the energy is generated at coal power plants, and is unacceptable according to sustainable development policy. So this is a big barrier, and the more successful Kazakhstan is in developing renewable energy sources, the more attractive will the country be. And you may have heard that together with UNDP, we've launched an initiative on compensating a carbon footprint, which is created by consumption of mining data centers. So this is probably the first step. And the second and most important step would be to develop renewable energy. As I've mentioned, there can be quite interesting collaboration models there between the miners and the renewable energy players, which could reinforce each other. And the miners will help in developing renewables. The renewables will attract even more miners. So this will create a synergy effect for the country, for the economy, for international investors, and for everyone. Everyone wins. Okay, thank you, Vadim. In Kazakhstan, we are working on transition to green economy, but it's gradual. Well, we're certainly looking forward to your green bonds in AIX. Thank you. Next, I would like to move on to our next speaker, Gleb. Gleb, I wasn't able to ask a question to you. I would like to learn more. What's your take on the cryptocurrency market? Has it become more civilized? Has it become easier to work, or has it become more difficult to work? There were some discussions on the news now that you have some active discussions with the UK regulator, but we know that in many jurisdictions there are some good positions. So what's your take on it? Has it become easier, or has it become more difficult for you to work? Well, generally speaking, the year has been rather successful for all crypto companies, or most crypto companies. There was another round of growth in cryptocurrencies price. Elon Musk and other well-known entrepreneurs are also attracting attention to cryptocurrencies. But we've seen how fast the NFT segment is being developed. In cryptocurrencies, in blockchain, we see many celebrities coming, and they also contribute to promoting cryptocurrencies. So overall, this year has been successful for cryptocurrency. We see a lot of new investors, and as you mentioned, the industry develops, the NFT appeared. So there are new things in the industry. But at the same time, given that there is a lot of attention focused on cryptocurrencies, the regulators are also trying to use various approaches to regulate cryptocurrencies. Again, central banks are trying to develop CBDC quite actively. So from the standpoint of regulation, we can see that the regulators of all or almost all developed and top developing countries are already starting doing something to regulate. Some introduce licenses, some introduce registers, others specify requirements for cryptocurrencies. So almost everyone is trying to regulate it. We can see similar trends in the post-Soviet countries. As you may know, Russia has recently adopted a law on digital financial assets. In the Ukraine, we are expecting that the law will be adopted in July, which will legalize cryptocurrency. And certainly we hope that Kazakhstan will actively work in this direction and will allow local crypto platforms, crypto exchanges to interact directly with the banks. Because for us, for Binance, for other crypto exchanges, this is one of the key directions which we would like to see developed. So, from the standpoint of regulation, we'll certainly see more and more actions taken by the regulators. Right. But what's your take on development of CBDC? Will this be like stable coins that will be linked to some national currencies, or will this be an impediment to you? Will this simplify the work of exchanges? Well, I think that a lot will depend on how certain CBDCs will be launched and how the world after implementation of CBDC will look like. But in Binance, overall, we are quite positive about CBDCs. We think that development of CBDCs will bring additional attention to cryptocurrencies. Digital finance will continue to develop, and we don't think that CBDC will compete with cryptocurrencies. It's rather a situation when they will be complementary to each other. Well, again, it depends on what the regulators will do with cryptocurrencies after introduction of CBDC. There is no common opinion yet. China, for instance, is moving towards harsher positions. Some other countries have more lax position. But overall, we think that CBDCs and cryptocurrencies will complement each other rather than compete. All right, thank you. Thank you once again. For Kazakhstani miners, what could you offer? I know that you have some exchanges, something else. So what could you say? Well, for Kazakhstani miners, we can offer our pool. We have a Binance pool, and the product that we are developing actively right now, and we're actively working with miners in Kazakhstan on it. So we hope, yes, that given the situation in China, we hope that this will serve as an additional boost for the industry and mining in Kazakhstan. And we certainly hope that Kazakhstan will fully use this opportunity and will attract additional miners from all over the world. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And we'll probably ask Amangeldy about what Kazakhstan will prepare for the miners. Mr. Amangeldy, in terms of mining, I guess Ministry of Digitalization did a lot of work, and there were some benefits provided in the Astana hub. There was a law adopted, whereas in AIFC, it's more about platforms and definition of cryptocurrencies and different regulation platforms. Then in terms of mining, a lot of work has been done by the ministry. So recently, I know there were some amendments to taxation implemented. Is that some kind of a response to the activities in this area, or what is it about? Could you elaborate? You know, once you switched to me, you started to be very official. You can just call me by my first name. I came to state bodies recently from a private sector, and you're actually correct. A lot of work has been done in the mining area, and all of our participants here are probably representatives of a cryptocurrency. So mining is the very first step from where the cryptocurrency is appearing. And June 25th of 2020 was a significant date when the law was signed and amendments were made in relation to mining. And this is the date that can be considered a key date, in a sense that from that day, we could say that we legalized mining. The definitions were specified there as well. And as a result, as you may know, is that as of now, like our previous speakers have mentioned, there is an increase. Kazakhstan is becoming a leader in this area. So this was the first step along the way. The next step is related, again, to something that our colleagues have already mentioned. Right now, we need for those cryptocurrencies that are mined on our territory in Kazakhstan, we need to manage it. But what do I mean? Basically, right now, it's going to other locations. It's sold in different crypto exchanges, and other countries get some added value from it. From the standpoint of the government, this is not a desirable situation. We wanted to be able to have management of cryptocurrencies here in Kazakhstan and for cryptocurrencies to stay here in Kazakhstan so that it could create some added value for Kazakhstan. So this is something that we are working on right now together with AIFC. We have created a working group headed by the first Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Ismailov. This is a working group which includes several associations, representatives of business, parliament members, government bodies, such as the Agency for Financial Market Regulation, Agency for Financial Monitoring, National Bank is included there as well. So right now, in the framework of this working group, we are working on the model. There will be a pilot, again, in AIFC. We are working with retail, commercial banks, and those crypto exchanges that will be registered here will get an opportunity of opening accounts in the commercial banks in Kazakhstan. So this will create this second step when trading could be done in crypto exchanges in Kazakhstan, and then this second round of added value can be extracted. Well, certainly AIFC is attractive because there are many tax preferences. This area is quite transparent. It's using English law and international standards are a priority. So in this regard, we are trying to be very transparent. And probably the fact that I have experience in private sector and now I'm working in the as a civil servant, my previous private experience is very helpful because I try to feel what the business feels. And I try to look at it from the government standpoint as well. Well, certainly, as a government representative, I have a completely different level of responsibility because it's important to think about the citizens, about the future of the country. So in this direction, we will try to do our best and cooperate with business, with private sector, and also ensure that we uphold the interests of the state. Okay, that's great news, I guess, for our global audience, for our international audience. Thank you. And we have also invited Dauren. And Dauren is the director of the Department of Prudential Regulation, Financial Regulations of the Agency for Financial Services, Financial Development. So Dauren, a question to you. Given what Amangeldy said, what could you say about this working group? What could you say about the preparedness of the bank? Will this work? Good afternoon, Kairat. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum. You know that the current regulation for the financial market limits the engagement of financial organizations in the activities related to crypto assets. The current legislation prohibits the trade of unsecured assets with exception of AIFC. Also, digital assets are not considered financial instruments and cannot serve as a means of payment, but can serve as a form of certifying property rights. According to international recommendations, FATF in those countries where crypto exchanges activities is allowed, there are risks of using cryptocurrency for fraud purposes, money laundering, and terrorism financing, and countries were recommended to take measures on recognizing the actors in crypto industries as subject of financial monitoring. They recommended to do inspections, due diligence of crypto actors, reporting suspicious operations using risk management approach, and they recommended to identify the thresholds for transfers and prohibit some types of activities. In addition to positive factors of cryptocurrencies, which the previous speakers have mentioned, according to FATF recommendations, there are also risks which the countries are subjected to. For instance, there can be anonymous transactions in cryptocurrencies with no identification of the beneficiary. There are risks of using these virtual assets for fraud purposes, money laundering, and also capital drain from the country. As a regulator of the financial market, we see the risks for potential investors as well. In here, there are risks of volatility, price volatility. There are risks of data loss, risks of criminal prosecution. Dauren, I'm sorry, I don't want to end on this sad topic. I just wanted to get back to the question. The question is, if all of that is done, if all of the risks are mitigated, the pilot projects that were now mentioned in the working group, have you started working on it? Are there any work done with crypto exchanges, pilot banks? Do you have some kind of sandbox mechanism? Is that being implemented or not? What I was trying to say is that currently the Agency for Financial Monitoring has prepared the draft law, which would consider people who trade in digital assets as those subject to financial monitoring. So the plan is that there will be regulation in place. And as the previous speaker has mentioned, upon the instruction of the Prime Minister, a working group has been created. The roadmap was created for development of crypto industry, and we plan to launch a pilot project on development of crypto exchange and interaction with the commercial banks. You may also know that right now there are discussions underway on introducing the limits for retail investors on buying the cryptocurrencies. These matters are still subject to discussion, but in general, for retail investors, there will be some limits identified. So in any case, there is work underway, yes. All right, so with that positive note, I propose to end this session. I would like to thank all our participants. This topic is a big topic, and hopefully we'll have another opportunities to discuss it and to discuss positive news from Kazakhstan. Thank you all. Thanks.